Hi, today I'm talking to Simon. He's a chef and an author, and he's really passionate about what he does. In the last few years, he's developed a bit of a cult following, and I'm here to find out if he's the real deal. So let's ask him some questions. Simon,
Hi.
you say you're on a mission to empower people through food.
Yeah.
Tell us about your relationship with food.
Well, what can I say? I used to be a lot bigger than this. So my relationship with food has always been one of finding comfort in food. But I really love food, and I've really grown up around amazing food. I have an amazing mother, right, who really knows how to cook. That's one blessing. And when I was 9 years old, my parents divorced. It was very shocking. And our family, we felt very abandoned by our father, bless his heart. And we're on better terms today. But we moved into this little council estate, and I felt very, as a 9-year-old boy, I felt like, how am I going to look after my sisters and my mother? I was there with 3 women. The one thing I could do to really help out, as my mother was going to university, working 40-hour weeks, was to go to the kitchen and knock up a dish. So as a young boy, I would always look over her shoulders and help out in the kitchen. And one thing my mother told me was that food and cooking is easy, no stress. She goes, you just do this, you just do that. So for me, I was always very comfortable around food. I looked at her cooking, I was like, I can do that. I can do that better even. That's the sort of attitude I had. So she would leave me a whole bunch of ingredients before going to work, and if she would come home 5 o'clock in the evening, there'd be a bubbling lasagna in front of our family. And we had a lot of trouble, and I was a bit of a, I wasn't always the nicest boy in many ways. I was a bit of a rebel, but the cooking was one thing that held us together around the dinner table. So that was a very early start of having a good relationship with food. Like I said, I find a lot of comfort in eating. But I had this real passion for cooking, and I thought that society was kind of pushing that out of me. A chef was not a glorious thing to be back in those days, sort of late 90s. So my parents kind of pushed me through a business school, and I ended up having a go at the corporate world selling IT components. And I was pretty good at it, I was pretty convincing. But when I was traveling around Australia in a van, and I've kind of talked my way into a chef job, I still remember that first time, after getting 6 weeks of abuse from the head chef, that first time I received a compliment that I actually did something right. I decided, that's it, I'm becoming a chef. So that's a very long story short. I had to start at the age of 22 at the bottom of the ranks of a restaurant, and I really worked my way up. As much as working in a restaurant was very hard work, a lot of sweat, a lot of blood, a lot of tears, and also a much smaller salary than anything I could ever make in the IT industry. It was just such an amazing industry to be in, to be surrounded by ingredients all day long, to be surrounded by food, drooling over all this stuff along with a couple of other guys and girls in the kitchen was such a dream job to me. So food then became an even more important part of my life, and as I was working more with food and as I started to work on myself, I became a lot more balanced. So that's the first step. So I guess, yeah, go, yeah, please. Yeah, ask
That
me.
brings me to my next question.
Okay.
How did New Earth cooking come into existence?
New Earth cooking come into existence. Well, after many years of working as a chef in the harsh restaurant world, and kind of going through what I would call a spiritual awakening, where I started to wake up to the reality of this world and all the issues that are going on. I started to get in touch with myself. I became less and less inclined to, sorry, I'm just wiping away a very dangerous insect. I became less and less inclined to spend time stressing in these high stress environments, cutting round potatoes into squares just because they would look good on a plate. You know, a lot of these aspects of the fine dining world, as much as I really respect the chefs that work it, I really do, it's a beautiful art, a lot of it didn't make sense to me anymore, because we were feeding the elite, the upper class, and I had this strong urge in me to feed the planet. You know, there were so many mouths to feed, and I think food should be about sharing and sitting around big tables and enjoying the gifts of Mother Nature, rather than it all being so stuck up. And also I felt in traditional fine dining there were so many rules and regulations pushed onto us by French, Italian and Chinese cuisines that are kind of going obsolete. Right, so I'm trying to keep this summarized. How did New Earth Cooking come into being? I escaped from the traditional restaurant world and moved into health cooking. I worked in full-on organic places where every single ingredient, including the vinegar, had to be organic. I've worked in very trendy sort of health food cafes in places like Sydney and Bristol in England, where a lot of innovation was taking place and still goes on today in terms of local food and organic food and what healthy food really means. And eventually I was brought to Bali, and there I was offered an amazing opportunity at a place called Bali Silent Retreat. Basically a blank canvas. It's a retreat center for prayer and meditation and for people to come and find themselves. And the founder gave me the opportunity to completely shape the cuisine. 4 hectares of vegetable garden and big communities at our disposal to work with. Initially, I thought, oh my god, I'm going to have to cook for yogis. I'm going to have to get my hands on some goji berries and spirulina, chickpeas and quinoa, right? Because that's all they want to eat. And I went shopping for all that stuff in a nearby town where they had those health food shops. And I spent hundreds of dollars on ingredients. And we invited the creme de la creme of Bali health food world with all the restaurants, and we fed these people and they were happy. And I was left so frustrated because I spent more money on importing ingredients to cook food that was perceived to be healthy than I would spend on the staff and the equipment and all the things that really matter when it comes to bringing food to the people, the farmers, of course. How much money were the farmers going to receive? How was Mother Nature going to benefit from this way of cooking? So at that point I realized there's so much hypocrisy in the health food industry. Just because it's a health food industry doesn't mean it's healthy, and just because we believe it's healthy for our body doesn't mean it's really going to sustain the planet. So I decided to come up with a way of cooking that's going to question. It's going to question, what will it take for all 7 billion of us on this planet today to thrive? Not just to feed ourselves a diet that sustains us, no, to thrive, to be super healthy, to be happy, to be aligned, to be in touch with nature, and I think we should thrive. That's what New Earth Cooking is about, and I'd love to tell you more about it, but I feel like I need to have a little sip of water. Yes.
Okay, I'll ask you my next question.
Yeah, sure.
I often experience mixed feelings when it comes to hearing revolutionary ideas like this.
Yeah.
It is great to strive for healthy dinners and wholesome diets, but what about the poor and hungry people in the world? How can they benefit from these ideas and this way of thinking?
Yeah. So I hear what you're saying. And often when we talk about organic food and health food, the idea is, oh, this is just for the elite. This is the new fine dining. This is just for the people who can afford it. If you look in America, the leading health food supermarkets like Whole Foods markets, it's an upper class. And how are we going to feed the masses? Well, that's exactly what I'm asking. This is the most important question to ask, and the rest will follow. Why are these people poor? Why are we talking about Africa in terms of poor people, large parts of Asia, or even civilized nations like America? A large part of the reason is our current agricultural system. So we moved from self-sufficiency up until 50 years ago in many places to now a system which we call the Green Revolution, where the big agricultural companies took complete charge of the food we produce. And at the moment, these big companies are taking charge of our food on a genetic level, which means if you own the genetics of food, you own everything. You see what I mean? So I'm not saying buy this product or do this or do that. I'm saying let's question the way we feed ourselves. Because these communities that we now call poor and uncivilized and left behind, they were doing okay. We don't need to go there and help them because they were doing fine until us, and I'm talking, Caucasian European people, until we came there and forced IODs onto them. And Bali is such a great example of a place with the most incredible man-made beauty and balance being part of their religion, of their spirituality, of their way of life. The Sukha Dukkha, the way of life here, and it's embracing. And it's so clear on this little island to see how fast that can crumble when it's under pressure of a modern economic system. So on Bali, this New Earth Cooking is very easy to apply. So let's look at the poor people here, and how does New Earth Cooking affect them? If we come here as visitors and we want Parmesan cheese and broccoli, yeah, you go figure what kind of impact that has on their economy and on their community. But if we start looking for the superfoods and the health foods that are traditionally part of their culture, and if we start embracing the coconut oil, the palm sugar, the heritage rice varieties, everything that they could traditionally offer us as guests and that we could share, all of a sudden these people are starting to see the value, and not just monetary value, because monetary value is fleeting. The rupiah doesn't mean so much in these communities where people will be bartering back in the days. When we start looking at what's really valuable here, then all of us start to thrive, you see. So New Earth Cooking is no set of guidelines. It really digs deep into the cause. And on my website there's plenty of articles written about this. So this is not an elite way of eating or living. This is for every individual to explore. What does New Earth Cooking mean to you? And Simon here is very keen to support you on that journey. That makes sense?
I hear what you're saying, and I think a lot of people would love to start moving more in this direction.
Yeah.
But I speak for myself, and I think a lot of other people, when I say I wouldn't even know where to start. I don't have the budget to buy fully organic produce. I don't have the time to start my own vegetable garden.
No.
What advice would you give to people like me?
That's a very, very good question. I think start at the level you can afford it, right? Sure, I've moved to the countryside and run 4 hectares of organic permaculture gardens together with an amazing team of people, and we cook everything from scratch. And we love sharing this with you. But not every single individual has to do it. I'm a chef, it's my mission. But what if you could only grow 1 tomato? Or what if you could only go for a walk in the forest and connect to nature? What if you can find out why trees are so important? Why they dig deep 7 meters into the ground to dig up old minerals and suck it up through their roots and drop the leaf? Why is it important to compost? If only we would show a little bit more interest in the natural systems that are present here to support us, we could already make a difference. So New Earth Cooking, again, is not going to tell you what to do, but I've developed a philosophy based on 5 P's, 5 aspects of any purchase decision you make that can help you, can support you in finding out your impact and therefore finding out what you can do. So let's say next time you go shopping for food, and there's going to be a point in time where you will, and you're about to buy a mango or a bunch of asparagus, then the 5P philosophy will help you to find out what your impact is going to be, right? So the 5 P's are, of course, the place, where is this from, and the product, what is this about, and should it be sprayed with chemicals, should it be processed, or could it be more natural? Again, not telling you it should be, it's just questioning. And what's the price I'm paying, and what's the real price I'm paying, and can I afford to pay this price? Should I pay $5 for a chicken, or $25? What's a fair price to pay for a chicken's life? All that kind of questions are explored. And my fear of spending too much money on food, is that a reasonable fear, or can I afford more? What about the medical bills later on in life? So price really explores that, it ties in with the first 2. The 4th P is about people. Now people are super important as part of our food cycle. No one wants to eat chewing gum made by children in China, probably, and a lot of us do. But it's also the lady behind the checkout counter or the man in your local supermarket. What if they look unhappy? What if I can look them in the eyes and say, how are you doing? And thank you for being part of my food cycle. Right? So place, product, price, people, and of course the 5th P, the most important one, is our planet. It's Mother Nature that holds it all together. It's about realizing that nature is not something we can put in a bottle and put on a shelf as a miracle cure to live healthier and happier, as some scientists are now claiming. Nature is what we are part of. We are part of nature. It's the billions of parasites and bacteria in our gut. It's these flowers right here. It's the stuff on my skin. Nature is everywhere. We are part of this. And it's about finding our place in nature again, rather than putting nature in its place. And that's the journey that we're going on. It's about questioning, how much can we keep taking from the planet without giving back? And we are now introducing all these amazing new babies, new children to our planet, our next generation. What's going to be left for them? How are they going to feel about us? Right? So these are really important questions to ask. It's a very exciting time to be alive. I feel we are at the brink of some major breakthrough. There's a lot of really amazing projects happening around the planet. I have so much more to talk about, but I see you want to ask another question. Is that true?
Yes, I do.
Go on.
So, when I watch the news, sometimes the world's problems can just seem so overwhelming.
Yeah.
And your ideas seem very optimistic.
Yeah.
In all honesty, do you truly believe that humanity can thrive in the long term? And what do you think would be the key to that?
I sometimes wake up in the morning and I hear if half of Indonesia is burning down to the ground and 20,000 orangutans are dying. I cry, and not just a little bit. Honestly, I feel very sad, and I think a lot of us are feeling it. But then I scrape myself back together and I'm like, are we going to focus on the solution? Because there's a reason we're born onto this planet right now. And sure, there's a lot of challenges, but there's a lot of amazing things happening at the same time. So I think your most important part of this question is, what is it going to take? And it was a guy who was a lot smarter than I am, assumably his name was what, Einstein?
I may have heard of him.
And I'm not even going to quote him perfectly, but he said something along the lines of, we cannot solve today's problems at the same level of thinking that we created them. So I believe the most important thing is to question, what's fueling the madness in the world? What's fueling the poverty, the inequality? What's fueling the greed? And it's our egoic minds that make us believe that we're all separate and we all have to fight for possessions and we have to battle each other. And I don't think that a lot of us are actually still believing that. And I look at what happened in Paris very recently, these terrorist attacks. And the reactions I see to such a shocking event, as there are so many shocking events happening around the world, not just Paris, the reaction is no longer from fear, the reaction is from love. And that's the major difference, that when 9/11 happened so many years ago, there was a lot of fear in our reaction. But now, you see everyone standing up saying, we refuse to believe it's a Muslim problem, or it's a this problem, it's a race. No, there's a lack of love and there's too much ego, and we're no longer willing to be part of that. And the beauty of that, I see that people are willing to look at themselves. What do I carry inside? Where's the madness in me? When I was standing at the supermarket checkout once, I got the last 2 packets of cookies that my mom really likes, and she really wanted me to buy them for her. And I remember a woman behind me looking at me saying, oh, I really like those cookies. And initially my reaction was, well, good for you, and I wanted to buy them. And then I realized, what am I doing? Of course we're going to both have a packet, because they're almost gone. I don't need to. But my initial reaction probably came from ego, from fear, from, no, I need to have this, I need to have that. Those were patterns that we thought served us for a long time, but we're now evolving past them. Little things like that, if you can recognize that in yourself, if you can own up to your own madness and say, yes, I got really jealous and and then you say, yes, but it's not really me. I'm just the observer behind it all. And all this inner child stuff, all this pain inside of me, I'm healing it and they're healing it, and we're finding greater levels of love back in the world. Now I know this sounds very general. What has this got to do with food? Everything. Because as we start working on ourselves, as we're consciously evolving, normally evolution happens kind of automatically, but we're choosing to look at ourselves. There's just so much more space for love into our lives, because wherever there's no fear, love will just flourish. And wherever there's love, man, there's really good food to be had as well. We start cooking all these really good little things, it starts to get a lot of fun. So this journey that we're going on is not one of hardship and working really hard and depriving ourselves. In fact, and I invite you to come to this Bali Silent Retreat and look around the gardens and the kitchens, and you'll see how much love is there, and you'll see how much joy is there, because the people are acting from love. There's no one is deprived of anything. There's abundance. It's an absolute Garden of Eden. And the whole world can be like that. Is that being optimistic? Absolutely. Do I believe in it? Absolutely. And sometimes it's so beautiful to go into a war-torn country of conflict, sit down with the locals, say, what's for dinner? And just get stuck in and bond like that. It's the most beautiful thing. Human connection is strong. There's so much love still going strong, and I have a lot of hope for humanity. But it's going to take for all of us to take responsibility, first and foremost, for our state of being, for our state of consciousness. Anything that follows from there is going to be beneficial.
Well,
High five.
cool.
Cool. Thank you for raising those questions.
Thank you for taking the time to chat with me.
Yeah, you're welcome.
It's been very inspirational and informative.
Thank you. And you can go to newearthcooking.com anytime. I have videos on there, recipes, articles. There's a Facebook page called New Earth Cooking which you can like. There's a YouTube channel, New Earth Cooking, which you can subscribe to.